Whispers of the abyss, unveiling the enigma of the abandoned manor. Scary story. The Guest, a history of terror. To help them understand my daughter's situation, it is necessary to go back to when she was in my womb. She was nearly 8 months pregnant when a strange incident occurred. I lived in a house with my 2-year-old son, my husband, and myself, in a very quiet subdivision. Next to our house, there were a few neighbors, some older adults, and another couple with 3 teenage children. On that day, around 3 in the afternoon, the street was completely peaceful. I was making a dress that I had ordered. My son was asleep in his room, and my husband was at work. I had the sewing machine running when I heard the sound of a baby's wailing. Due to the noise from the machine, I couldn't distinguish where it was coming from. I paused for a moment, went to check on my son in his room, who remained asleep, and then returned to continue my work. Just as I started sewing again, I heard the cry once more. This time, I got up to investigate, trying to understand its origin. I considered the neighbors on both sides, but those households didn't have any babies. It was during this investigation that I heard the same sound again, but this time it was clearer, coming from inside my house, as if the baby were muffled under a blanket, making the sound distant. Upon the third cry, I paid closer attention. Placing my hand on my belly, I felt the vibration of the crying. It was the being developing inside me that was crying. I paused my work, sat on the couch, covering my hands over my large belly because I couldn't hear the crying. I remained puzzled for a while, trying to comprehend how this could happen. After a moment of reflection, I dismissed the incident and resumed my work. When my husband returned from work, I shared what had happened. He downplayed it, considering it normal for children to cry. I insisted that it was not normal inside the womb. Since he showed little interest, I didn't mention it again. Days later, I confided in my mother about the event, but she, too, showed little interest. I concluded it might be a more common occurrence than I initially thought. When my daughter, Andrea, was 7, she befriended a classmate. Sometimes the friend played at our house, and other times Andrea visited her. This led to conversations with the friend's mother. During one conversation about our pregnancies, I recalled what happened with Andrea. I mentioned that Andrea cried in my belly. The woman immediately hushed me, putting her index finger to her lips. When I inquired, she explained that there was nothing harmful about it. On the contrary, when a baby cries before birth, it signifies a unique ability, clairvoyance, and sensitivity to communicate with spirits beyond our world. However, she cautioned me against discussing it further, as revealing it might cause my daughter to lose this gift. I asked her how she knew that. In the past, when I tried to discuss it with my husband and mother, they dismissed it as normal, not listening to me. She explained that not everyone possesses this information, and it can be challenging as it's a gift of life. I struggled to comprehend what she continued to share. She explained that as my daughter grew up, she would be able to connect with beings that coexist with us in this world, a capability not everyone possesses. Seeing it as a gift, something remarkable, she was moved and began teaching me the ritual she performed, along with a theory about energies. Andrea and I left her friend's house a little before dark. I decided not to share this with Andrea, considering her age. From that point on, I observed her actions carefully whenever possible. One day, while sewing in the living room, I heard Andrea talking to someone. Initially thinking she was playing with her brother Danny, I overheard her discussing our pet, with giggles turning into laughter. Suddenly, I heard multiple "no" "s" and a teacup flew out of the tea set. I rushed to the room to find Andrea alone with her table and tea set on the floor. When I asked about her brother, she insisted he wasn't there, only with his girlfriend and the dog. I inquired who she was playing with and why he was angry. Initially shaking her head negatively, she later cried inconsolably. Between sobs, she explained that the being wanted to harm our pet, and when she refused, they threw tea at her and hit her with a small instrument. She pointed towards the closet, saying the being was no longer there. Attempting to comfort my daughter, I planned to discuss this issue at a more suitable time. On another occasion, as we headed to school, Andrea joyfully waved goodbye to someone. When I looked to see who it was, there was no one on the other side of the street. Still smiling, Andrea pointed forward when I asked who she greeted. In that moment, I understood that Patty's mother's words about my daughter were accurate. I searched for the classes to start, and when I saw her, I approached her without any preamble. After that, I shared with her the situation I'd experienced with my daughter. She reassured me, saying that, in general, these beings are lost and don't know the way back to their world. She explained that these energies need to be channeled, and as long as they are not evil spirits, there is no need to worry, all is well. Instead of reassuring me, her words frightened me a little, especially when she mentioned the possibility of an evil being. I continued to observe my daughter's behavior. Fortunately, as she grew up, those visions seemed to disappear, or at least, that's what I thought. When my daughter entered adolescence, she never mentioned seeing something again. When I tried to ask if she still saw imaginary beings, she avoided the question and didn't answer. The horror guest story. After completing her university studies, she began looking for employment. Initially, it was challenging to find a job that she enjoyed, and she worked in a company where she felt uncomfortable despite the salary and work environment. An opportunity arose to work as an academic coordinator, and she applied for the position, successfully securing it. However, the job was not in Guadalajara. It required relocating to Mexicali. After some contemplation, my daughter decided to move to this city. Upon searching for a house to rent in Mexicali, she realized that rents were high, with some owners even pricing in dollars, likely due to the proximity to the United States border. Despite the intention of sharing housing to reduce expenses, she found a reasonably priced house and contacted the owner. Transactions were promptly made, allowing her to move into the house immediately. Andrea began living in Mexicali. When we spoke over the phone, she mentioned that the house was well located, although the area was not ideal. Her workplace was within walking distance, and there was only one thing she didn't like. After pausing for a moment, as if hesitant, she finally revealed that something lived in that house. From the moment she entered, she sensed that something wasn't right. The interior was dirty, and the air felt difficult to breathe. I tried to reassure her, suggesting the house might have been vacant for a long time, and empty houses often have a strange odor. However, Andrea insisted that it was more than a simple smell. Something was not right. Days passed without communication from my daughter. After several attempts, I finally managed to contact her. She mentioned being busy with work and the move's organization. She avoided discussing what she had seen and neglected to mention a series of mishaps. Each phone call with my daughter became more distant, leaving me puzzled about her behavior. Then, one morning, I received a call from Andrea, and though it took me a moment to wake up, I answered, feeling a sense of fear. The voice of my daughter was like a whisper, attempting to convey something softly and breathily. I asked her what was going on and why she had called at that time. After a few seconds of silence, which felt like an eternity, she responded with desperate weeping, telling me that someone was in her house and that she didn't know what to do. Fear gripped me. Panicking upon hearing that, I urged her to hang up immediately and call the police. Her response left me frozen. On the other side of the phone, I heard a firm no. She insisted, "This won't be resolved with the police. There's an intruder in this house, but he doesn't belong to this world." During this time, she began receiving pictures on her cell phone, sent to help me understand the reason for her altered behavior. The images were of her own arms and legs with several bruises. I couldn't comprehend how these injuries could be inflicted by someone from another world rather than a real person. She explained that every night, as she slept, she woke up with more traces of blows. Though she hadn't witnessed when they occurred, the imprints on her skin bore evidence of these attacks. I must admit that for a moment I doubted what my daughter was telling me. I couldn't fathom how an incorporeal being could physically harm another person. Sensing my hesitation, she responded that what she was saying might not be credible, but it was true. The demonstrations of the being she lived with were gradually increasing. As Andrea spoke about these events, she began to calm down. More quietly, she detailed how it was all unfolding. Initially, she noticed a shadow running along the walls, as if someone was trying to get to know her while going unnoticed. While lying in bed, she felt a part of the mattress sink, as if someone were sitting at the foot of her bed. When she bathed, she glimpsed someone passing through the gap in the door. On one occasion, bathing with hot water, the fogged mirror captured an ethereal face, not fully distinguishable, but with certain features that represented a face. My daughter continued her story, acknowledging that while these events were unusual for her, she was accustomed to seeing people who didn't belong to the physical world. However, as days passed, the presence of this being became more pronounced, and its manifestations grew more invasive. One night, after finishing work, Andrea brought a female companion to her home. Engaging in pleasant conversation, they lost track of time. A friend asked to stay overnight, given the distance to her own house, and Andrea agreed. After her friend left, the presence of the being became noticeable. Dishes, ornaments, and paintings fell. Lights turned on and off. On a night when Andrea went to bed early due to feeling unwell, she took medication that caused drowsiness. When she woke up, she discovered bruises on her arms, as if someone had forcefully grasped or struck her, leaving her bewildered by the inexplicable events. At the beginning, she believed that she herself had been beaten, but this thought didn't make any sense. After realizing that she was getting hurt more frequently, in certain parts of her body, the worst thing happened on the day of her call. There was a sort of specter in the corner of her room, which remained motionless and inert from the moment it appeared, doing nothing at all. However, its presence generated much fear. While I was talking to my daughter, I advised her that the prudent course of action would be to leave that place. As the days went by, the being showed signs that it did not like her presence. She told me she had considered that, but had nowhere to go. How could she ask one of her co-workers for help and explain the reason she couldn't stay in that place? They might think she was crazy. I suggested that just for that night, she should leave while we looked for a way to solve the problem. Following this advice, she rented a hotel room. That night, she was able to rest and wake up without any injuries. At her workplace, a concerned colleague noticed her tired and impaired state, asking if she was sick. Initially denying it, she eventually confided that she had been feeling unwell for days. Knowing she had no family in that place, her colleague offered support. My daughter, no longer in doubt, took the chance and told her colleague everything that had been happening in her home. Surprisingly, her friend showed understanding and offered her own home as a place of refuge. The friend of Andrea managed to connect my daughter with a woman who could intervene in the problem. As soon as this woman had contact with Andrea, she remarked on their striking similarity. They both had the ability to see beings that others couldn't. After taking charge, the woman provided a list of items for Andrea to bring to her house, including holy water, incense, candles, black salt, and other tools to help cleanse the space. Andrea and her friend performed the recommended rituals at the house. Upon entering, they sensed a strong odor and had to step outside for a breath of fresh air due to immediate nausea. After completing the rituals, they stayed in the house for a while without anything extraordinary happening, and then decided to leave. Andrea reported the events to the woman over the phone, and when told to repeat the ritual for 3 days, it appeared that the situation remained unchanged. My perspective was that the being felt comfortable alone, and with my daughter out of the house, it had the room to itself. The woman, aware of the nature of these beings' manifestations, advised my daughter to come to her for a thorough cleansing of the place, scheduled for 3 in the afternoon. Another set of esoteric elements was acquired to perform the ritual. In the house, the 3 of them, my daughter, her friend, and the woman, began the ritual. As the woman prayed and spread incense with a strong aroma throughout the rooms, they started hearing noises throughout the house, as if the being resisted leaving. At that moment, my daughter experienced a range of unpleasant emotions: infinite sadness, despair, nihilism, apathy, and intense hatred. Andrea realized that the being had not been able to transcend beyond because it was held back by its lingering emotions. That night, the woman advised them not to sleep there, stating that each ritual needed a sufficient impact. However, in a few days, they could return to the place. That evening, Andrea had a series of dreams where it seemed as if she could learn everything the being wanted to communicate. In reality, it was impossible to determine if what she dreamed was real or just an illusion. What is certain is that she could coexist with that being without it attacking her further.